The son of a single black mother and an Ethiopian refugee father, he has committed his life to advocacy and public service. He is the first black person to serve the 7th District, the first openly gay member of the Illinois Senate, and the third openly gay black state senator in the nation. With his glorious crown of hair and bright spirit, this servant leader is actively committed to opening doors for people who have historically been treated unjustly by the government. Please join me and the people's politician, Illinois State Senator Mike Simmons, in the arena right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Senator Mike Simmons, it is a pleasure to welcome you in the arena. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
You gave me some advice before we started taping, and it was to go where my energy takes me. And it took me through a few reshoots of the cold open, but it got me here, so we're good.
Wonderful.
But let's focus on you. Let's begin at the beginning, shall we?
Okay.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Chicago, Illinois in 1983 in the Lincoln Square neighborhood of Chicago.
Okay. Tell me about the woman and men who created you.
My mother, Ramona Rouse, had me when she was 18 years old, and we were very close. She was a just wonderful mother who was just a great lover of her 2 children, really prioritized education, really prioritized fun. We grew up in a fun household. Music was always playing.
Okay.
Everybody worked hard. And my dad was a refugee from Ethiopia. He had just got here maybe a year and some change before I was born.
And are you the eldest, youngest?
I'm the oldest.
Okay, it's the arrogance with which you said it. Or I'm sorry, let me take it back, the confidence. Younger brother or sister?
I have a younger sister and a younger brother.
Do they enjoy the confidence with which you wield your power as the eldest?
Well, the 3 of us have our own spheres of influence, but they tend to look up to me.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. Were you all close growing up?
We were, yeah.
Okay.
I practically helped raise my younger sister. She's 11 years younger.
Okay.
So, as I said, my mom had me young, so I remember changing diapers, buying, milk, formula.
Okay.
I remember one of my favorite memories is putting my sister to sleep. I would lay her down on the couch and I'd rock her like this. I carried her in the apartment when my mom first brought her home from the hospital, so I was a key parental figure there.
Wow, and that's an unbreakable bond.
Of course.
Yeah. I have a sister who's 13 years my junior, and we travel together, we hang out. She's one of the smartest, brightest people I know.
Yeah.
But there is still that combination of I'm her brother, plus in some ways I was one of her parental figures.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. But
Yeah.
let's go back to you.
Oh, I gotta say too, and my younger brother, who's 15 years my junior.
Wow.
I gave him a lot of piggyback rides when I was younger.
Yeah.
He's a grown man now, just graduated college, but we still have that bond.
Good, nice, good for you. That's incredible. Your parents were the OG entrepreneurs.
Oh, that's right.
Both of them owned businesses for 25 years.
That's right.
Each. Tell me about each of the businesses.
Okay, so my mother opened Salon Pastiche in 1995.
I love that name.
Salon Pastiche.
Yes,
Beautiful
come on.
name, right?
Yes.
And the sign was this beautiful neon pink sign, trademark in the Rogers Park neighborhood, which is in my Senate district. And she ran that place for 25 years with 2 children in tow. And somehow made it work and had a clientele of diverse people from all over the world. And my dad ran the Wild Hare, which was a reggae bar and tavern in Lakeview. And that,
You had a great experience growing
yeah.
up.
I mean, any of your viewers anybody who has lived in Chicago for more than 20 years probably has heard of the Wild Hare.
Okay.
And it was an institution. People from all over the country would come here to go and hang out there. There was a movie in 1997, Love Jones, that was filmed there. So,
With Darius?
Yeah.
Okay, go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So these are the
Oh, wow.
the men and women that brought me in this world.
Unbelievable. Well, that will explain a lot, because I always say to our viewers as we're having these conversations, if you pay attention, not even close sometimes, there are themes and threads that really help you to see who a person is and what shaped who they are.
Right.
Something else that I think is worth noting, your family was in fact among the list of firsts, the first black family to integrate Lincoln Square after the U.S. Supreme Court mandated public housing be built in Chicago's North Side. Were you at the time aware that you and your family were different? How did that impact, or were you protected from knowing the weight of what your family was actually doing?
That's a really good question. When I was growing up, you think about how somebody grows up somewhere and that's all they know.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I appreciated the weight of all this when I was growing up. In fact, I can tell you I had no clue.
Okay.
I just know I grew up on a kind of quiet block in a neighborhood that we didn't even call Lincoln Square. Right?
Wow.
People that are from Chicago, you just say what intersection
That's
you grew
where
up,
I am.
Foster and
Yes.
Lincoln,
Yep.
Devon and Clark. And I remember my neighborhood being very working class. We had a lot of immigrant families, including some longer-term residents who maybe had been 2 or 3 generations into that neighborhood. But we were one of the first black families that lived there. And so I think I was keenly aware growing up that I was one of the only black students in my classes. I remember some discrimination that I would experience, kind of casual racist comments that would be made about me or my skin color. Or I remember one time my mom had braids, and in second grade, my classmates were making fun of her hair. And I remember I wanted to fight. I was just like, Mom, they were talking about your hair. They said you have a beehive. And she's like, well, this is a beehive. And I was like, oh, but they said it in a mean way.
Right.
And,
you were ready to rumble.
It's
your mom.
I love my mom,
Yes.
yeah. But, even that just felt like kind of part of the broader struggle in our society, right? Being a black person, particularly in the late 90s, a young black person, an outspoken young black male, was something that I knew I would struggle with wherever I was in our society, but it was not a unique thing in my neighborhood where I grew up.
Speaking of your neighborhood, where did you go to high school?
I went to St. Ignatius High School, not far from here.
So, and for our viewers watching in Chicago and beyond, that is considered a premier school. Where did you go to college?
I went to Amherst College in Massachusetts.
Considered a premier college.
It is.
Okay, just keeping up.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, what year did you graduate college?
2006.
If I were to ask you in 2006, hey, Mike, what do you see yourself doing, being professionally by 2023? What would you have said?
Well, when I was in high school, I wanted to be a teacher. I always had a lot of respect for educators and for teachers. And some of my best role models when I was younger were actually teachers. So I wanted to be a teacher. And I wanted to teach history. I wanted to teach classical languages. Those were the things I was interested in. And, I think even in my role now, I teach all the time. I mean, I always find myself, encouraging people to continue learning. My partner and I are talking about continuing education. So I think that's still very much with me.
Okay. You're openly gay.
I am.
And non-gender confirming.
Yes.
Talk to me about the journey from knowing who you are, and so the point of knowing, and the point of having the comfort to answer the question the way that you just did for family. So tell me one about family, and then the general world around.
So, when I was younger, I had a couple of formative experiences. So when I was in elementary school, I was assaulted by a security guard that believed that I was gay. I was 11 years old. I was walking down a hallway in June of 1994. I was 11 years old.
I remember it.
And June 28, 1994. And the security guard grabbed me from behind and threw me up against the wall and said, you're walking like a little F-A-G-G-O-T. And if you keep doing it, I'm going to pop you in your face. So I knew something was wrong with that. Okay. And I went in the classroom and I told my teacher what had just happened. And she corroborated what the security guard said and said, well, maybe you are a little in front of 39 students. And so what happened for 6 months after that was I was bullied, I was attacked.
Because they sanctioned it.
Yeah. And so that became an environment I couldn't continue to be in school in. We did another 6 months there, and then my mom had to pull me out. So that, I knew something was wrong about that, and I knew that there was something about my identity that I would have to fight for. And what's interesting is that's been my whole life. You know, and even in my role as a state senator, I'm still fighting for the LGBTQ community so that we can be seen, so that we can learn about our history, so that we can be who we are, so that we can have access to healthcare, so that we can have access to housing, so that we can start families. And so that 11-year-old boy continues to be a drum major for my leadership today.
Interesting. And it's funny, I ask that question a lot because I sit here right now and I go, two gay men are sitting on television having two gay black men are sitting on television. I would say both with very cool hair. I would. But I'm 15 years or so, you're older than you.
Okay.
And I was saying to someone in my lifetime, because I do have a deep love for me, suicide was never something I thought about except for the time in my formative teen years where I went, and it just struck me, as you said, and it takes me away from even what I have here. My biggest fear was that if I walked and it was squishy. So I spent, instead of dreaming about my future education, getting ready to go to U of M, it was get from point A to point B without someone calling it out. So you've got to keep it straight, don't move it. And the amount of pressure. And I was talking to a friend whose daughter is on her journey, and she called me and I'm like, and this parent is doing the work. And she said, you know, her daughter has friends who she can talk. And I'm like, oh, if I had that. It felt so solitary. And you think about it now, which is why we'll talk about some of the work you're doing. It's so powerful and why I wanted to have you here, because I would hate to have thought that you had gotten pushed off track. But that is so weighty when you're that age. Yeah. And you're finding out who you are and you feel so alone in the world. And I wonder how many folks we're losing because we just won't let them breathe and find their way. Right. As an undergraduate, we're going to move now to career. Okay. Because they only give us 28 minutes.
I know. Talk all week.
Yes. As an undergraduate student, this is just a resume. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Okay. Undergraduate student, you worked as an intern, an intern in the United States Senate office of one Barack Hussein Obama. From 2007 to 2009, you worked as a staff assistant and legislative correspondent in the office of Senator Dick Durbin. 2009 to 2011, you served as a policy director for Cook County Commissioner Bridget Gaynor. 2011 to 13, Rahm Emanuel, policy director, then deputy commissioner, Chicago Department of Planning, from 2013 to 2016. Then in 2017, you founded Big Sky Strategies, a public policy consulting firm. Then in 2020, you became deputy director of My Brother's Keeper Alliance, an initiative, again, managed by the Obama Foundation. And then in February of 2021, because you don't seem to like vacations and breaks, you were appointed, you don't have to answer, that's rhetorical. You were appointed, as a surprise no less, you were not, as systems of politics go in Chicago, you were not the heir apparent, but you were appointed to replace retiring Senator Heather Staines, serving the 7th District. And in January of this year, while holding a photo of your late mom, you took the oath of office and was sworn into your second term, this time elected by a nice number by your constituents. Back to first, you are the first black person, I said this in our opening, to serve in the 7th District, first gay member of the Illinois Senate. In your not even 2 full terms, you've been busy. And I say that to say, as we are in this political season, it felt like you've been on a path. When did you know you were on a path to this? I know you wanted to be a teacher, but when did you, because you started putting intentional pieces together. This seems like a resume of someone who has a clear direction of where they're heading. Walk me through how you got from the undergraduate student working for then Senator Obama to a now 2-term legislator who has passed some important acts and seems to be finding consensus where so many others don't.
Yes. First, I want to mention that, I didn't mention this at the beginning of the interview, my Senate district covers the Chicago neighborhoods of Uptown, Edgewater, Rogers Park, Lakeview, North Center, Lincoln Square, and West Ridge. I feel like it's really important for viewers to know they may be watching their state senator. So if you live in one of those neighborhoods, I'm more than likely your state senator.
Excellent.
So,
and that's a diverse kind of swath.
Oh my gosh,
That's,
it's one of the most diverse Senate districts in the state of Illinois. And so it's I always like to say it's a towering honor to be a voice and to be a representative of that community. The same community that raised me and gave both my parents opportunity.
That's been your
to be
home from the beginning.
Since I was conceived.
They must be so proud.
It's an incredible honor.
Good.
Yeah.
Right.
So to answer your question, you know, it all starts with the household I grew up in. My mother, as I said earlier, really put a premium on education and learning, knowledge, and understood that was a path to power, that was a path to liberation, that was a path to self-sufficiency. And so throughout my career, I have always looked for opportunities to build empowerment for communities. When I worked on Capitol Hill, I was able to focus on bringing economic development opportunities to people across the state of Illinois. I was able to fight for opportunities for people to have access to affordable housing and healthcare. And that has been the through line in pretty much every opportunity that I've had. So, you know, when I worked at the County Board of Commissioners, when I worked at City Hall, I was pushing to have equitable neighborhood development, making sure that parts of Chicago that don't have grocery stores have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, because we know that the life expectancy gap in Chicago is about 30 years between black neighborhoods and those that are not black. So I think me coming to the state senate is kind of a natural outgrowth of that work, right? You spend so many years fighting for these issues and incorporating the voices of the community, and then actually getting things done, right? Having some successes, and there becomes a chorus of people in the community that know your work. And when you run for office or get asked to run for office, you know, you gotta do that and take that opportunity, and then you gotta really bring it home for the communities that believe in you.
Great answer, by the way. I'm going to lay out some things because I am, and I've always been pragmatic. And I understand what politics is, and I understand why I will not only never be a senator, but certainly not a successful one. Because it's a hard space where, I mean, it's an understatement. It feels like, just watching the news and what I know, it's a hard space where I'm not sure everybody is clear on the definition of what public service and success looks like. And it seems like sometimes just winning versus winning for your constituents. So I'm going to lay a few things out. You co-sponsored, and your good growing run as senator, co-sponsored paid leave for the Workers Act, which provides employees in Illinois a minimum of 40 hours of paid leave, which can be used for any reason within a 12-month period.
That's right.
How profound?
It's a big deal.
How
big deal.
So again, as I'm talking about this, sponsored legislation that will allow individuals in certain groups to file a name change for reasons of marriage, transgender status, religious beliefs, or status as a victim of trafficking. And your comment when that happened, the rights and well-being of I should know this. LGBTQ plus. We keep adding letters.
We're a big community.
We are. LGBTQ plus communities has been under attack by other state legislators and right-wing media, especially the rights of trans youth, said Simmons. I want all those in Illinois who identify as transgender or non-binary to have the ability and access to have their government names reflect who they are. Why? I'm going to go off. Why? May I ask you, do you think that people care so much about what my name is and my preferred pronoun?
First, before I answer that, I want to come back to the paid leave bill. One thing I want to point out about that legislation, in my office, we have a People's Legislative Council initiative. And so what I do, a big part of my public service is bringing in people from my community. So we have a space for single moms from the 7th District, those neighborhoods I named earlier. We have a space for returning citizens. We have a space for longtime residents who are homeowners and who are at risk of displacement. We have a space for youth. And so about probably 3 out of 4 bills I've introduced have come directly from regular people.
Come on.
Not lobbyists.
Wow.
Not vested interests. From regular people that live in those far north side neighborhoods who have never had an elected official come to them and ask them anything, and that, let alone see it get introduced and passed into law.
Did they trust you, or did they just look at you and go,
Oh, I think people are always skeptical, right? But I think people can tell by how you do it if you're sincere. And I think people look at me and they look at my background, the kind of people, talk about people that shape me, and it's clear that I don't come from a connected family. I don't come from a political family. My mother was not political. My dad was not
Right.
political. So people really appreciate that. I can go back to them and say, hey, we did this paid leave bill, and this was something the single moms told us that, hey, I've got kids, and I would love to participate in their after-school programs. I would love to take my kid to his therapist appointment, but I can't get time off from work because I have 3 different jobs that are dynamically scheduled,
Absolutely.
and I don't control my schedule, and I have no agency. So we're dealing with these kind of systemic issues, and I'm so proud of that. So
Good for
I have to mention that.
No, please. And so I think you may have answered my question, but you may have a different answer. You have passed some significant legislation in addition to actively securing $1 million in state funding for the replacement of lead pipes in South Evanston.
That's right.
So of all of the things you've done, I'm gonna put pressure on you. What if you could only pick one right now and say that's the one right now that resonates? Is it the answer you just gave me about the leave?
Which piece of legislation?
Uh-huh.
That's a good question. You asked a minute ago about the issue with the transgender community and pronouns and identification. Identity is such an important thing, right? I am an intersectional black person who is a state senator, first black person to serve from the far north side of Chicago in the Illinois Senate, first person to be from the LGBTQ community to serve in the Illinois Senate, first person, Ethiopian American, my dad was from Ethiopia, to serve in either chamber of the General Assembly. So identity is so important. And for people in the LGBTQ community who are transgender or who choose to use a name or pronoun that is more respectful of who they truly are is something we must honor. And so I'm so happy that we got HB 2542 signed into law literally last week.
I am as well. Good for you. I want to ask.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm not answering any of the questions you're asking.
Listen, but it's your house now. Go, Senator.
The legislation I'm probably the most proud of, I have to talk about the Jet Hawkins Act. This was a bill that we introduced and got passed that bans hair discrimination in all K through 12 schools in Illinois.
Come on.
That started from a 4-year-old boy in Chicago, black boy who had gone to school. His mother had braided up his hair, and he was so excited about his hair. And the school administrators told him that his school violated the school handbook. So he felt like, my hair is getting me into trouble. I read about this story and I said, you know what? I'm a state senator. I can take action. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to be cynical. I'm not going to throw the paper across the room. I did throw the paper across the room because I was angry. But we wrote legislation and we fought for it, and that is now the law of the land.
What is that act?
It is the Jet Hawkins Act, SB 817. Signed into law August 13th of 2021. It is the proudest achievement in my first term.
And see, for me, that was good. It's your life, but that was my answer. When I was like, if I were him, what would I?
It was that.
There's so many. And we are continuing to have a certain number of conversations here. So I'm already going to do it on the air where put some pressure on you. You've been here before. You're a member. You're like family here at this station. But we're going to keep having those conversations. Here is what I want to ask you. I imagine that people who work with you are already, because we tend to not let you be where you are, we're always thinking 2 steps ahead. Are you hearing any type of chatter, conversation, something in your spirit for national office? And I know the answer is we're doing the work here, but it seems to me that you are well qualified to walk and chew gum from just your work.
Yeah.
Do you think about that, of how you can, one, take the same energy and people politics, where you're listening, and not for a way that's self-aggrandizing, but really on a national stage where so many decisions that impact our community come from.
Yeah.
What's the feeling on that?
I think it's so important to be present with where you are and to seize the day. And in the role that I have as a state senator, you have so much authority to achieve good on behalf of so many people. I have nearly 250,000 people in my Senate district. And so I think it's now almost 2 years that I've been in this role. I've been laser focused on delivering results when you talk about economic empowerment, access to affordable housing, mental health for youth, making sure that senior citizens feel incorporated into our agenda and have a dignified set of standards where they live, whether they're in housing or in a retirement facility. I've been so busy with those things, and I've felt very much like I've been able to channel my talents and my energy effectively in my current role. So I love what I'm doing right now, and I'm gonna keep at it.
I'll ask you again in 2 years. That's the end of this segment.
Okay.
We're not done.
Okay.
We're going to come back after the break, and I'm going to, our final segment is called Three for the Road.
Mm-hmm.
So you stand by. We'll be right back.
The players, the politics, the problems, and the people. Political Forum offers local legislators and political newsmakers an opportunity to participate in a one-on-one interview to discuss the most important political headlines in Chicago. Join us for Political Forum Wednesday at 7 p.m. on KNTV 19 and streaming at kntv.org. The world is watching Chicago. Chicago is watching Political Forum.
Senator, this is the part of our conversation where we step into a segment called Three for the Road.
Okay.
This is how it works. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. You're going to give me 3 answers. Ready?
Okay.
All right, here we go. First question. If you could have dinner with any person living or dead, who would you choose and why?
I would say Black Hawk, the chief of one of the last indigenous groups to be displaced from Illinois in the 1830s. I would say Dr. King and probably Helen Keller.
So, great answers. I said one person. That was.
Oh, I misunderstood that.
Listen, you're busy, and I like the fact that with just certainty you went, I'm going to reframe his question.
Sorry.
You ready for number 2?
Yes.
Do you have any regrets? And it cannot be give me 3 answers for one.
I do not have any regrets.
Why not?
I believe that life is all about the journey that you embark upon. And a big part of the meaning of life for me is making mistakes. And I think that the regret is to not have learned from those mistakes.
Wow.
And I feel like I've learned from the biggest mistakes I've made.
Good. Final question. One piece of advice present day Mike would have given his 21-year-old self.
Don't be so anxious. Relax. Life is about much more than what you think you have planned, and so make sure you're paying attention.
My goodness. I've got one more question, because sometimes I cheat, and counting's not my thing. Who's Michael Sullivan?
Michael Sullivan is my better half.
Look at the way the face lights up.
Yeah, no, love of my life. We've been together for just over 4 years now. I like to tell a story how we met.
Please do.
So we met on a Sunday morning in November of 2018. We were at a Victory Fund event, which is an LGBTQ civic organization. And I saw him from across the room. The event was ending. And so I went over, summoned up the courage. I went over to introduce myself. It was a 60-second conversation. And I said, hey, I do a lot with public policy and healthcare. I know you work in healthcare. Let me get your email so I can set up a coffee with you, a networking coffee. So I remember I wrote his email on the back of a napkin. It's very old school.
Come on.
And I took a week to follow up and email him. And it took 2 more weeks for us to get together. And it ended up being a 3-hour coffee at his job. And our next day,
Because you were doing.
we were networking, but talking about all of our life stuff. And then we had a second date, and we had a third date. I asked him to go steady with me, and we are the love
Been
of each
rocking
other's
it ever
life.
since.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Good. It is always nice when you are doing important things and working hard to have someone that makes you feel less alone in the world, who you feel like is your lobster you're going through it with. Senator, I knew it was going to be a joy talking with you. This is not your first visit to CAN TV. I promise it won't be your last.
Okay.
But thank you for and I say this personally, but I say it on behalf of a grateful constituency. In this dash moment, it is important that people are doing it when the cameras are on and off.
Yep.
So in any way that I can personally, as Darius Hillman, sit here and say to you, keep it going, brother. Good for you. We appreciate it more than you know.
Thank you so much for having me here. This was such a joy.
Thank you. And thank you, Chicago and beyond, for tuning in. I'm going to leave you with a final thought for the road, courtesy of writer Paul Auster. To leave the world better than you found it, That's the best a man, a woman, or a person can do. Until next time, take good care of you and each other. Good night.
That was wonderful.
It felt good. It felt good.